I believe we now live in a world where we're incredibly connected. But at the same time, we are the most disconnected. We are the most disconnected from each other. When I was growing up, everybody knew everybody. If I acted up 2 blocks away, they knew exactly where to go. Now, nobody knows anybody. Some of you don't even know your neighbor 3 houses down. Guess what? I'm one of them. And I know the folks across the street. I know the guys next door. But, go 2, 3 houses down. It's like, well, I'm not sure. Like, we have become more disconnected than we've ever been. Like, literally from each other and ultimately from ourselves. I believe this disconnection, this chasm is being broadened every day with new technologies, every day with new entertainment, every day with digital advances. And if we don't get this thing figured out, man, I believe that more people will live and die without making a real impact. Like you thought you made an impact. I have 500,000 followers on social media, but did you make a lasting impact?
If you want to be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. It's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspiration and perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live your dream. Your purpose now. Inspiration and perspective. Let's slay your goals.
It's a weird weekend. So there's a lot happening. There is a lot happening. I feel like I've been a radio host for 11 years, actually 11 and a half. And one of the things I've really worked hard at is really not bringing politics into the show, because my commitment is to speak to self-development. And I believe that there's enough conversation about what's happening politically, where on Sunday mornings when I come on, and before it was Sunday mornings, it was Saturday evenings at 10 p.m., there was no need to discuss politics. There was no need to discuss elections. The closest thing I've said about an election is do your research. Don't trust mainstream media. Look deeper. And then vote in alignment with what you believe is best for you. I mean, that's probably the closest that I've ever come. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am an American that in many ways feels disenfranchised with the country for a lot of reasons. I mean, part of it is just my own. When you look at, as a quote unquote black man, African American man in the United States of America, we've been disenfranchised across the board, and I feel that. But I've also, on the other side of it, been incredibly blessed by what is the system of the United States of America. And so because of that, I want the best for this country because I'm a citizen, my children are citizens, etc. What we saw happen yesterday was not the best for this country. It was not. And any time that there's an attempt on someone's life, I don't care who it is, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And on a very personal level, I am so grateful that former President Donald Trump was not killed. I'm so grateful because I respect life. But let me share this as well. I also respect the democratic process that this republic goes through every 4 years. I respect that. And every person's vote matters. And when an elected official or someone who is looking to be elected is not given the opportunity to go through that process, that's a problem. And the fact that there was an attempt to eliminate that process is a problem. And here's what I would share with you all. Whether you agree with what I said or not, and by the way, if you feel, and no judgment, but if you feel differently about what happened yesterday, you should check in with yourself on a couple of levels. One, just a human level, that life matters. I don't care whether I agree with you or not. Like, life matters. It really does. One of the things that I plan to talk about today is how we live in multiple realms: the spiritual realm, the physical realm, and the mental or psychological realm. And then as well, the astral realm, what some people call the astral realm. Like, these are the different realms that we live in. And I'll talk about this on a deeper level, but I believe now there's an introduction of a fifth realm, which is the digital consciousness, digital realm. Okay, and I'll go into that in a deeper way. But when you fully understand, like, the fact that this is a multi-dimensional, multi-realm experience, then anytime something happens that is on the side of evil, like an attempt on someone's life, I don't care who it is on the side of evil, then I'm happy to see when evil does not win. Period. Just period, right? And that is a firm belief that I have. Now that's one level. Like, if there is, some level of, oh man, if they had just taken him out, we wouldn't have to be concerned with him. Like, you should check yourself. That's why I say that. That's the first reason I say that. The second reason is because I don't think, if you feel that way, that tells me that you don't understand how delicate of a balance the United States of America sits in right now. How delicate that balance is. How delicate this democracy is. How delicate, and in many ways, how fragile the current state of this country is. And I don't know that we could actually survive that. Like, that there wouldn't have been such a level of anger and disruption and disorganization that would have, really had consequences for weeks to come. And so, I know we all have different opinions, but for most of us, we believe, for most of us, right, say 80% of you listening, we all believe that thou shalt not kill. That's biblical, right? Or in the Quran, right? Like you don't take out your brother, whomever it is. And, someone went against that yesterday. And it's not okay. It's not okay. What I would say to you is be thoughtful, be prayerful, and don't believe everything that you hear in the coming days. Like, stay curious. Today's topic is the 21st century connected, disconnected human being. The 21st century's connected, disconnected human being. And boy, did we have an opening for it yesterday. I did not, you can't make this stuff up. Here's where I want to start. 1895, the year 1895 has been in my space recently. And, I pay attention to things. A client of mine, their business was started in 1895. And I was having a conversation with the CEO. Like, wow, how were you all able to stay in business this long? And I was asking him these questions about the company. And I'm not going to go into that because I want to stay with this 1895 thought, right? And he was kind of sharing with me, who they are and how they're one of 20 companies that are still trading on the stock exchange from back in 1919 when they went public. Which is like, think about that, right? Like one of 20 that are still, the rest of them, no matter how big they got, have come and gone. And so then 1895 popped up in some stuff I was looking at on history. And I was like, oh, it's 1895 again. And then this week I went and my brother-in-law, he's a real estate broker. And he's like, hey, there's this deal in the Pullman area. Let's take a look at it. Went and looked at it. And the building was built in 1895. And I said, this is interesting. 1895 keeps popping up. So then I said, what happened in 1895? Now I got to look, right? And so I went and I looked at what happened in 1895. And you should look it up. Like, if there's a few things where I was like, And I can't even go through them all because people get like, people have such strong opinions, But look up Oscar Wilde, 1895. It's like very interesting. Make a note of that. And, but in 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen discovered X-rays while experimenting with cathode rays. He just kind of came upon X-rays. And what is an X-ray? It's the ability to look within. The ability to see inside. Oh, interesting. And by the way, like the creators, he's interesting because I've been like, okay, we did the whole how we've been being poisoned, and the last couple of weeks were around that topic in some way. And so I was, being thoughtful and prayerful in terms of like, okay, what do we talk about here? 1895, X-rays, see within. It's like, and this whole idea of self-love was in my space. Part of it is because the Slayer Goals community, we meet today and we'll be talking about pillar number 2, relationships and love, and self-love in particular, which I think is completely misunderstood. So looking within, I go, okay, looking within. Interesting. Then as I'm looking at some of the other history bullet points, this one jumped out at me, and it's the Lumiere brothers. Had their first public film screening in Paris, and this was the beginning of the motion picture industry. And I said, isn't it interesting that in 1895, in this year, we created technology that allow human beings to look within, like literally look within, and at the same time, technology had begun to create itself in a way where we could lose ourselves without, on the outside, like within film and things that capture the eye and in many ways influence how we think. All that got created in the same year. And I was like, that can't be a coincidence. I don't believe there's any coincidences. But it's like, so when we had the ability to look within, we also gained the ability to, in some ways, teleport ourselves out into stories, into a completely different reality. And so I began thinking about the realms we live in. And this is going to go a little deep. I think I have to in order, So I was like, okay, so you have the spiritual realm, which, by the way, is, very difficult for us as human beings sometimes to put our arms around because you can't see it. You can feel it, though. You're influenced by it, but you can't, the spiritual realm. And what does it mean to stay connected spiritually? Let me give you an example. A good friend of mine, like in terms of like spiritual realm, Brother Tony in the Facebook feed said there's a spiritual battle going on. How did he say it? Thank you, Cantice, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. How did he say it? Spiritual battleground is what he said. And you're 100% correct, brother. Spiritual battleground, which tells me that you're spiritually connected. You can sense the spiritual forces that are in conflict right now. Some of y'all prayers saved Donald Trump yesterday. And somebody's like, my prayers? Your prayer. Because you're saying, Lord, save this country. Lord, help us. Like, all those things. And then it's like, because I don't think it would have been good. I just don't think it would have been good if something happened to him. And so you should continue to pray for the country and trust whatever direction it goes that you are, if you're a child of God, you're going to be okay. Whoever's elected, it doesn't matter because you're a child of God, right? And you serve a king, not a president, the ultimate king. But I was thinking about this spiritual realm, and I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who has been a ranking police officer for years. And I want to give you an idea of what I mean by spiritually connected, because he's also a believer. And he was sharing with me, he was like, man, Linnell, there's something about being connected to the Creator that gives you supernatural power and understanding. And I was like, tell me what you mean, man. Now, by the way, I understand this, but I wanted to understand his personal testimony of it, right? So I'm like, tell me what you mean, man. And he was like, man, God is so good. He was like, and he started telling me about the different opportunities where his life could have been taken in the line of service, and how there was a quickening in his spirit in terms of how to move and what to do. In one particular case, he was telling me, a guy was basically looking to teach him a lesson because he was embarrassed by being arrested by him, etc. And how the Creator just, was like, hey, you need to be thoughtful, or nothing's going on right now, but you need to call for backup just to walk out of this building. Just things like that. And he said he would listen to it, and sure enough, it would divert what was happening. That's what I mean about spiritual connection. When you're given insight, like you're connected in a way, you're connected to the spiritual realm in a way where you're given insight about how you're supposed to move. And by the way, when you're connected that way in this multi-realm reality that we're in, then it gives you a sense of peace. But it also provides you instruction, because he was saying how, he was being told, well, you should go back over to that area or to that neighborhood. We need you over there. And he said, no, the Spirit of God ain't told me I can go yet. And it was not cowardice, it's obedience. You get the difference? It's like, that's an example of the spiritual, right? The physical we all get and we all know and we understand. And I want you to, when I had this conversation about how we're being poisoned, I hope you all understand that what's happening in the physical realm with the clothes and the food and all that is not just a physical realm problem. but it's a spiritual realm problem. The reason why it's even happening is because there's something going on in the spiritual realm. And if I can take you out physically, I can take you out spiritually as well. I believe there's a very powerful connection there that is often overlooked. That my physical is just as important. Well, of course, the spiritual is important, but my physical is important as well. And it should be tended to. The body is a temple. It said that. It says that. Okay. Then you have the mental realm, or what we can refer to as the psychological realm. And when I think about this, we've all heard the saying that you live in your head, right? And by living in my head, I can disconnect from my heart, but I can also disconnect from my physical body. Like there's some of us who are not aware of our physical realm. I'll give you an example. You're so in the mental, psychological, like thinking all the time, that you're not paying attention to yourself, so much so that you could be getting sick and you don't know. I always wonder how people get surprised by sickness. It's like there were signs, but you have to be connected to the physical realm. I find it interesting that we live in a more so physical realm than anything, and that people can actually separate themselves from the physical and be caught so much in their mental that they forget what they look like. They don't notice physical symptoms of sickness. And then when it happens, it's all a surprise. I don't know how I got sick. I don't know how I gained this weight. I don't know. And by the way, as a coach and someone who's in these conversations on a regular basis, these are things I've heard. Like I've heard people say, like, I haven't really seen my body in a while. Like I've literally heard people say this, right? Why? Because they're disconnected from the physical realm. They're not really taking in what's around them physically. And so as we live in this multi-realm reality, like we're talking about the 21st century's disconnected human being, like we see that many of us, while we are quote unquote connected, we're also more disconnected than we've ever been. The fourth part of the realms that we navigate, so-called navigate, or at least what's documented, is the astral realm. And for some folks, they're going to be like, well, Linnell, what are you talking about now? But in the East, there's a belief that there's a realm that's outside of consciousness that exists. And this is where you go when you meditate and things like that, an astral realm. And if you meditate, there is a feeling of like not being fully aware of the body anymore. So you mentally disconnect because thoughts aren't permeating anymore. You physically disconnect because you're breathing, but you're not even consciously aware, like the subconscious takes over. And you're in this place between the spiritual and the physical, right? They call that the astral. And so that you all understand, I've come to understand that that's part of the problem with fornication, right? And for a long time, I couldn't understand. I was talking to a minister about this, and he was like, well, the Bible says it very clearly, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but they don't say why. They tell you not to do it. Why? Why? Because I believe that when we understand deeply why something shouldn't be done, it actually, in many ways, supports you in making the right decision. Or if you don't make the right decision, at least you know what's going on. And so in certain religions or, certain realms of thought, there is a belief that when you lay with a person, that you create an astral connection. So what is an astral connection? Let me do this in the next 2 minutes before we go to break. An astral connection is a connection that two people have where my thoughts influence your thoughts. My emotions influence your emotions. Some folks don't understand why they wake up depressed. And it's like, well, you laid with somebody that has depression issues, and so now they woke up depressed, and so now that's impacting you. That's what they call that happening, astral connections in the astral realm. And one of the reasons you don't lay around with everybody is because then you have all these astral connections. And so what's going on with all of them is impacting you. Some folks are trying to figure out why they can't focus. And it's like, well, might be a lot going on for you outside of your consciousness. Okay, so when we talk about the four realms, that's what I mean. Hopefully that, I'll take some questions at the top of the hour, but I definitely want to, only questions about that, right? At the top of the hour, but I want to get into the teaching. And so four realms, that's complicated if you think about it, right? It's fairly complicated. And now what has happened is that human beings in our creative capacity have created a fifth realm, the digital realm, that you can live a completely different life in the digital realm, outside of the physical realm, outside of the spiritual realm, and outside of your mental realm. So we're now at a point of existence that if you don't slow down and get grounded, you will be lost. Let me say that again. We are now at a point of existence that if you don't intentionally slow down, like pump the brakes, give yourself the space to actually gather yourself in every one of these realms. What am I doing spiritually? What am I doing physically? How am I doing mentally? Like you look at mental health, the mental health crisis is not just a crisis in the mental realm. It's a crisis in the spiritual realm. It's a crisis in the physical realm. You don't think the food has something to do with this? You don't think some of the things people are smoking has something to do with this? Like there's physical stuff happening that's causing mental issues in the mental realm. Okay? You don't think the number of partners people are messing with, you don't think the person you slept with has something to do with your mental health in the astral realm? Okay? And you don't think your relationship with digital media has something to do with your mental health in the mental realm? Like all these things are connected. So we are now at a point of existence that if you're not slowing down to get grounded, you will be lost. And I want my men to hear this, because I think it starts with us. You can have your, whatever you believe, like, why he just talking to men? But I believe it, like, men play a role in each realm. We're here for a reason. The same way women play a role, very important role. We all play a role. And I believe a lot of men right now feel lost. Like, well, what role do I play? What room did it have for me? When you look at, like, right now, men, we're not as educated as we used to. Everything's changing for men. And, like, it's time to slow down and get grounded in each of these realms. Some of the best advice I've heard from men is, 1, get connected to God. 2, take care of your body. Like, you should be exercising. You should feel powerful. I think part of the reason men are struggling mentally is because they don't feel right physically. For one of the first periods in history where men aren't physically working. Men aren't, it's like, and by the way, you're not needed for that because AI is doing all that, whatever, robots are doing that. Manufacturing jobs been taken away. Like, you don't got to do that. And so then if you're not throwing boxes, then you should be throwing weights. Like, do something. Like, it'll bring you back. I promise you. But also, men are being impacted by this astral realm as well, because if you don't believe that the choices you make sexually, that the things that you're doing are having an impact on you spiritually, physically, mentally, they are. Okay, so, and I'm saying this to men in particular because I really do believe it starts with us. And especially for those of us who have families, because maybe, like something I really been thinking about was like, man, like maybe it's time for me to slow my family down. Let's slow down. Yesterday we had an opportunity to, just to connect. Slow down. And my wife is really, really good at that. So we are now at a point of existence that if you don't slow down and get grounded, you will be lost. I also believe that one of the most powerful ways to get grounded is to know your purpose, because it provides a place for you to continually come back to, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I doing what I'm designed to do? Many of us struggle with not only self-respect, but being respected. And I'm not just talking about men here. I'm talking about men and women. We struggle with self-respect. Allowing the employer to abuse me. Allowing someone of the opposite sex to abuse me. By the way, it's happening both ways. Men are doing women in and women are doing men in. Okay? Happening both ways. Allowing, like, and when we say look at yourself, like this idea of self-love, I believe that one of the reasons people are taking abuse is because they aren't grounded. You don't know who your daddy is. Think about this. A couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the 4th of July. And the reason, it feels like this country is starting to come to its end in some ways. But when it began, the reason it began is because you had a group of young men who were willing to fight back against something that they had a problem with. Like they were grounded in a belief. They were so grounded in a belief that they were willing to put everything on the line. Because think about it. I mean, they lost. They would have been tried for treason. A group of young men who were willing to put their lives on the line to fight back for something that they believed in. That's how this nation was started. And it seems like the new disconnected human has no fight in him or her. There's no fight for what we believe. Everybody's scared, even for yourself. Forget about what you believe in, right? But when it comes to fighting for yourself, let me give you an example of what I mean. So I did these 3 series on how we're being poisoned. And I don't have to check in a survey to know that just because you took the information in, it doesn't mean that it's translated into action. Why? Because we're now in a period in time where people don't fight for themselves. I mean, I guess I can't believe they doing that. I don't know what I'm going to do. And we just we acquiesce. We don't figure out how to fight. We don't get ignited by something. What? They put poison in the clothes? Oh, no, I can't do that. I'll never buy that again. Or I'm just going to wear these same jeans every day. I don't care what people say. I'm fighting for myself. I don't care what you say. You get where I'm going? I'm standing for myself. But instead, we're so concerned about what somebody else thinks that we acquiesce. We don't hold our convictions. We don't stand on, even when it comes down to taking care of ourselves, we don't stand on things and say, this is how it's going to be. Hey, Adi, why you wearing the same outfit every day? Because, man, this is the healthiest outfit I have. The rest of my clothes have poison. Fighting for ourselves. I question whether or not we have that innate human instinct of self-preservation anymore. Or maybe it comes down to the scripture that says because discipline doesn't come right away, we continue in our same old ways. Maybe it's that. I don't know. So maybe because my skin doesn't itch or doesn't feel like it's burning when I wear clothes that are poison, it's like, I'll do it next week. You would say that the 21st century is a self-love revolution. I call BS. I call BS because we're also the most informed. We also understand exactly how we're being poisoned, but we allow it. But I love myself. I got high blood pressure and I'm taking medication that'll take my kidneys out, but I'm not doing anything about it. But I'll get on a mic and scream, I love myself. Well, do you, and like no judgment, but just a place for us to look, like to get curious, like what are you overlooking for real? Because if you loved yourself, maybe you would change your diet. Maybe you would do something a bit more radical. Because there used to be a day where men and women actually put their bodies on the line and for the things that they believed in. And now we won't even put our behaviors on the line. What happened to the human instinct of self-preservation? The information is there. I'm connected, yet I don't change my habits. I'm disconnected. I know I should eat organic. I'm connected, but eating organic is too expensive. I'm disconnected. When our identity is intact, so are our actions. When my identity is intact, so are my actions. So what I believe is one of the reasons we're so disconnected is because fundamentally we're disconnected from ourselves. You don't know who you are. You don't know who you be. You have no idea how powerful you can be. You have no idea what your potential is. You haven't really grasped the possibility. And because you don't know who you are, because you don't know who you be, because you haven't grasped the past possibilities, because you haven't really come face to face with your identity, you are allowing your greatness to be taken out. When our identity is unknown, so are our actions. I don't know why I do that. I don't know why I eat like this. I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I don't do that. I know I shouldn't let people mistreat me that way. Connected. I don't know why I let these men and women treat me like this. Disconnected. Whew. I know I should practice self-respect. Connected. I don't know why I don't stand up for myself. Disconnected. When we were born, the most important currency that we could receive was love. In the first years, I remember when before Legend was born, my first child, right? My firstborn, I was doing all this reading. How do you adequately take care of a child? Right? How do you know? And one of the things I came across is that you could feed the child the wrong thing. You could give the child the wrong formula. You could maybe not necessarily know how to sleep train the child. You can make all kinds of mistakes, but the one mistake that you can't make or you shouldn't make is the mistake of not giving them love. And there was one book written by a doctor who was like, the most important thing, like at the very beginning of the book, he was like, by far the most important thing that your child needs to receive from you is love. From the ages of 0 to 3, if you love this child, they can overcome anything. If you feed them the wrong stuff, they can bounce back. If you don't give them the right rest, they can bounce back. Like, no matter what it is, but if you love that child, if you love them, if they receive that currency of love, then they have the opportunity to develop into a phenomenal human being. Then we grow up. And no matter what happened to us, the dysfunction, the trauma, somewhere along the way, we get disconnected from love. Maybe I didn't get it from 0 to 3. So I don't know what it looks like. I fight against it. But somewhere we get disconnected. And what I'm really afraid of is when it comes down to what I believe self-love like really truly means. Most of us, we're not giving it to ourselves. And that's why we're operating beneath our purpose and beneath our possibilities and beneath our potential. You want to talk self-love? Like a person who loves himself is meeting the possibility. Like you can see the evidence of. It's not just lip service. Self-love is hard work because when you think about love, love comes with discipline. There's been times where my son, I'm like, man, well, come on, bro, just act right. Like, because I don't want to have to discipline you. It doesn't make me feel good to see you feel sad. But because I love you, I will. Because I see your possibilities, I will. Because I understand your potential, I will. But are you willing to do the same for yourself? Like, isn't a detox and a cleanse that's an expression of self-love? Like we want to talk about going to the spa. We want to talk about, self-love, hashtag self-love Sundays. It was like, but did you push back the plate? Did you fast? I believe one of the reasons we don't care for ourselves in simple ways like diet and exercise is due to our mental diet and lack of innercise. What do I mean by innercise? Like doing the rotations of taking a look at every aspect of myself, putting in the reps of looking at how I behave, how I show up, where I'm keeping my word to myself, where I'm not, innercise. And so we're not exercising like extrinsic physical work because many of us have not done what we need to do on the inside. Linnell, I don't understand why I don't keep my commitment to walk. I don't understand why I don't keep my commitment to take better care of myself. I don't understand why I don't keep my commitment to my diet. I don't understand why I don't keep my commitment to eating only clean food. I don't understand. Let me help you understand. One of the reasons you're not doing that is because you haven't really, really taken a deep look at yourself on the inside. Like a real look. Like, do I keep my word to myself? How often? Ooh-wee. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I keep my word to myself all the time, I'm a 2. Be a great place to start. I'm a 2. How do I get to a 3? How do I get to a 4? How do I get to a 5? Innercise. A lot of people are telling on themselves in terms of where they are internally, because all you got to do is look at the external. The way these realms work is you become a reflection. You become a reflection. I ran into a buddy of mine. This is the 30th year since high school graduation. 30 years. So a lot of people I grew up with, we're, celebrating 30 years of being, having graduated high school. And you can bump it. I can bump this to somebody from way back in the day. I actually ran into an old friend in Target. And I looked at him. I said, "How you doing, man?" "I'm great." "No, you're not. Your eyes are sunken. They're black. I can tell you smoke too much. I can tell you drink too much. I can tell you haven't been taking care of yourself. You're not doing great. But you know what? What we do is we go, "Man, I'm happy to hear it." He's like, "How you doing, man?" I'm like, "I'm good. I'm blessed. No complaints." "Man, you look the same, Linnell." That's an expression like of integrity. And I don't look the same. I got less hair and, there's certain things, but you get my point. Like, age is going to happen, but I can also see, like, we can see the integrity of an individual on their face. I can see how you're living. It's literally written on your face. And you could try, I don't really do that. I don't really do this. You ever put a bottle of liquor in front of somebody who say they're not an alcoholic? Like, "Hey, man, you struggle with drinking?" No, sir." "All right, good, because I was going to just bring something out here for everybody. I don't want to mess anybody up." And then you look up and the bottle almost gone. They like, "But I don't struggle." Well, you're telling on yourself. You need to do some innercise. Work on the inside, asking yourself, who am I? A couple of months ago, I finished up a 12-step program called ACA. It took me almost 4 years. I started before my mom passed. And one of the things they talk about, the first step is admitting denial. The very first step. They're like, you can't even go through the other 11 steps if you don't admit that you lie to yourself. And one of the reasons I had a hard time doing the program is because I was like, I don't lie to myself. Now, mind you, I started this in 2020. And I feel like I'm pretty, I was talking to y'all in 2020. I was talking to y'all in 2019 and 2018 and 2016 and 2017, 2016, 2015. You go back, I was talking to y'all, and it's like, I think I got coaches and therapists. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm not in denial. And I realized I was in denial when I looked at my parents. So, I came from them. And I see denial in both of them. And I'm a product of them. And so if they have denial, I probably have denial too. I need to take a look. And then I went through the first step and I was like, oh, goodness, look at what I've been denying. It was scary. It was scary. And by the way, I was denying having the need to go through the program. And at first, I don't need that. That's not for me. That's for children who came up under alcoholics. My parents weren't alcoholics. They said, but did you go through some level of dysfunction? I didn't go through any dysfunction. But then I started learning more about my parents and realized they went through a lot of dysfunction, neglect, and all types of things. And they said, well, I'm a product of that. And no matter if they did the best that they could do, their best hit a ceiling, which means when they raised me, I mean, by the way, I have phenomenal parents. I thank God for them. Part of the reason I'm able to sit on this platform is because of them, but it wasn't perfect. So am I willing to take a look at where their humanity got in the way of how they were willing to raise me? Am I in denial of that? I think there's another part of us. I got an email from someone. They asked, well, how do you contend with the idea that no matter how good I'm trying to do, no matter how well I feel like I'm doing, there's some force on the outside that's poisoning me? You know, this was behind the last show, part 3 of how we're being poisoned. And what came to me was this scripture. And this is, I basically copy and pasted the scripture and I sent it back to him as my reply. That's all I put. Matthew 10:16. I'm like, we got to wake up. What does Matthew 10:16 say? This is what Yahshua said. He said, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. I could stop right there. Because if I'm a sheep in the midst of wolves, I need to understand that everybody trying to kill me. Why are you surprised? Why are you surprised? He said it. We're like, of course they're trying to physically take you out. And then he goes on to say, be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Wise as a serpent. Serpent's ability to actually have no legs and move on the ground and survive. Wise. Wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And just because you're doing it to me don't mean I'm going to do it to you, but I also got to know how to move. And I think some of us, we've created this Pollyannish idea that I'm supposed to be taken care of. You know, I'm supposed to be protected. Why would they poison me? And it's like, well, you are a sheep in the midst of wolves. You were told that. I think sometimes we read these things and we're like, oh, it's poetry. It's like, nah, this is the real deal. And you call yourself a believer? If you call yourself a believer, you got to believe it all. You can't just believe what you want. So here we are. When you look at the expression of love that you are giving yourself, where do you need to do better? When you look at the expression of love, I'm always blown away when folks tell me they can't afford certain things. I think we, like in this physical realm, we've gotten so attached to what is tangible. I'll go spend a whole lot on a jacket, but I won't spend anything on my mental health. That's interesting. I'll go spend a whole lot on a pair of shoes, but I won't spend anything on my spiritual health. That's interesting. But then I also say I love myself. It's like, that's interesting too. I'll spend money to cover up my body, but I won't spend money to heal my body. That's interesting. These are all things that make me go, that's interesting. But I love myself, or maybe it's time for me to admit to myself that I don't. Because I believe fundamentally that all transformation starts with a real self-awareness, like a true self-awareness of where you really are. And what I'm afraid of is most people don't want to know. They really don't want to know. I had a client, a potential client I was having a conversation with, and they were like, what do I do with the information I gained from coaching? Like, how do I feel like I'm about to step into Pandora's box. And I said, well, would you rather see it? Would you rather not see it? And they literally told me, like, I don't know. And then they decided not to hire me. They made the decision, I would rather not see it. I would rather not see it than to see it and then realize all these things I have to do something about. So they literally, and by the way, these are the same folks who will become influencers. These are the same folks who got a lot to say. Like one of the interesting things about being in the place that I'm in is that I talk to a lot of people. I talk to celebrities. I talk to famous folk. I talk to politicians. I talk to, journalists and newscasters. I talk to a lot of people. And it only takes me about 30 minutes to see what's really going on with folk. That's what I'm trained to do. That's what I do. And then one of the tough parts is because it's confidential, I have to just sit back in my box and watch them continue to do what they do and lead people. You're like, My goodness. I also think an act of self-love is being very thoughtful about who you allow to influence and lead you. Like very discriminative about who you, can't nobody just lead me and my family. Can't there just anybody. You know, you can't even, not just anybody can come into my house or be invited into my home. Like there's a certain level of healthy discrimination. Nah, I'm good. I don't listen to everybody. Someone sent me an influencer not too long ago and they said, hey, man, when it comes to African-American men who are talking, you know, like in ways that I really like it's you and him. I want you to take a look at him. And the first thing I did was like, who is this individual? And I looked at, you know, and then I saw, you know, the criminal record and felonies and, you know, reviews with people saying this guy doesn't deliver what he says he's going to deliver. And I never listened to him. What's the point? You know, you gotta know that part of the reality of deception is for a person to be able to fool you. And so another expression of self-love is to ask myself, like, become fully aware of how easily am I fooled? So self-awareness is the beginning of all transformation. Self-awareness is where it starts because I have to be willing to see what I don't see, whether it overwhelms me or not. And by the way, let me tell you, I remember when I first got involved in coaching and I started to see things about myself. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. What do you mean I have not enough context? What do you mean that I have to go through breakdowns just to have a breakthrough? Like I have to literally have a breakdown. I have to struggle before I have my breakthrough. I didn't want to know that stuff. Who wants to know that? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't even sound good. But it's the reality. If I want to transform my life, if I want to meet the possibility, if I want to be my potential, then I have to be willing to hear the truth. I have to be willing to navigate my personal truth. That is self-love. The second step to transformation is access to new choices. Because what self-awareness does, and let me be very clear, because part of what I've been doing over the last few weeks as we've been having these conversations about how you're being poisoned and spitting all these facts and all this research and this data is sharing a reality that creates awareness, but it's not self-awareness. Like, don't get it mixed up. Like, it creates awareness, but it's not self-awareness, because then self-awareness is another step in terms of how am I doing with this information? Am I aligning with this information? Am I taking this teaching and actually doing something with it? And if I'm not, then it gives me access to a new choice, which is part of the transformation cycle. Part of the transformation cycle is actually looking at what I'm choosing and what I'm not choosing and why. So now I'm aware. Now I'm aware that I have information that I'm not doing anything with. And why am I not doing anything with it? Because maybe I'm not making the choice like I thought I was to love myself. So then it puts me at a point of decision where as I'm moving throughout my days, as I'm moving throughout my weeks and my months, I'm constantly in this place of watching and noticing how I choose. Self-awareness. And it may not be perfect, but then that's where I go and get the support, or that's where I slow down and get grounded to better understand why I need to make the powerful choice. That's part 3 to transformation. Understanding why. Because just because you have information doesn't mean that you take action. Just because you have a choice doesn't mean you make that choice, because you're a human being and you have hardwired habits. And you were drinking that way before you heard the information. You were smoking that way before you heard the information. You were eating that way before you got the information. You were dressing that way before you got the information. And that has become a habit. And just because you have access to a choice doesn't mean you're going to break the habit, because that's part of the human flaw. And so now I need to create a powerful why that will transform my behavior. And at the core of it, you would hope that the component of love, like the actual idea of self-love, is at the very core of why you will do something that is uncomfortable. And what I'm afraid of is that it's no longer really having the impact, because self-love has been bastardized. It's been diluted. We don't really know what it is. If I love myself, I would cut certain relationships. That's what I mean. But see, in order to cut the relationship, I got to understand why. I got to understand why it's important to me. I got to understand how it's linked to my vision for my life. And in order to do that, you got to slow down. You got to slow down. You got to actually slow down. You might have to write some things out where you can actually get to why I am going to transform this behavior. And when you have why becomes a powerful intention for new behavior, for new action. And that's when you begin slowly noticing your ability to make tough choices. To make the tough choice. And it's not just one choice, but you go through this transformation cycle one time. I did the show where I talked about why we only transform once. Because it's hard. The first round is hard. And guess what? Consider that your life is a constant cycle of going through these rounds. I just expressed how I went through mine with the ACA program, 12 steps. I didn't want to do 12 steps. I didn't want to go through nobody's 12 steps. Come on, man. I went through a coaching program. I've hired coaches. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on self-development. I've hired therapists and psychotherapists and psychiatrists. Like, I've talked to everybody. I'm good. I don't want to transform anymore. I'm good. What are you talking about? Don't talk to me about this, AC. Come on, man. That was for you. You know, you were a drug addict. Oh, come on, man. Your parents abandoned you. Oh, your parents were alcohol. I get it. Then not me. I don't want to do that. It wasn't until I saw, oh, wait a second, there's something I wasn't aware of, that I got to go through this cycle again. And it's uncomfortable, especially when you think you're a beautiful butterfly. It's uncomfortable to crawl back into the cocoon and sit back and listen and learn and evaluate yourself. That's uncomfortable. Oh, boy, was it necessary. Oh, man, was it necessary. For me, on a very personal level, in terms of who I intend to be as a husband, who I intend to be as a father, who I intend to be as a leader, who I intend to be for myself. And I'm sharing this because I really want us to take a deeper look at this thing that we call self-love. Because I believe it's one of the reasons why, in a world where we're more connected than we've ever been, we're also disconnected as human beings. I believe we're some of the most disconnected human beings. I'm not taking comments. I believe we're some of the most disconnected human beings. So this is where the topic of the 21st century connected, disconnected human being is coming from, because I believe we now live in a world where we're incredibly connected. But at the same time, we are the most disconnected. We are the most disconnected from each other. When I was growing up, everybody knew everybody. If I acted up 2 blocks away, they knew exactly where to go. Now, nobody knows anybody. Some of you don't even know your neighbor 3 houses down. Guess what? I'm one of them. I'm one of them. And I know the folks across the street. I know the guys next door. But, go 2-3 houses down. It's like, well, I'm not sure. Like, we've become more disconnected than we've ever been. Like, literally from each other and ultimately from ourselves. I believe this disconnection, this chasm is being broadened every day with new technologies, every day with new entertainment, every day with digital advances. And if we don't get this thing figured out, man, I believe that more people will live and die without making a real impact. Like you thought you made an impact. You know, I have 500,000 followers on social media, but did you make a lasting impact? Did you transform someone's life? Did you make a difference? Because how many influencers have come and gone and nobody talks about them anymore? If you're funny, somebody who's funnier is going to replace you. If you're provocative, somebody who's even more provocative will replace you. Oh my goodness, Linnell is gone now. But if you're not serving your purpose, somebody comes slide right in. No big deal. People will forget. They'll forget you were even around. They'll forget you had 500,000 followers. Who are the movie stars that died last year? You don't know. You can't remember. Am I right? Were they doing work that made a lasting difference, that made an impact on other people's lives? And sometimes the folks we're worshiping, sometimes the folks we look up to, sometimes the folks we think we want to be like, nah, you don't supposed to be like nobody else. You're supposed to be as much of you as you possibly can be. As aligned with who you're supposed to be as you possibly can be. As within your own personal integrity as you possibly can be, not somebody else's rules. As connected with the Creator for you as you possibly can be. And I'm afraid like some of the simple fundamentals are getting crowded out. My son, he's going through the superhero phase. And so Marvel, Spider-Man, if you follow me on social media, you'll see something I posted with him in his Spider-Man suit. And it's one of the joys of fatherhood. Like, I love it. I like Spider-Man too. And so we'll have long conversations about Peter Parker. And I like the fact that I can leverage the fact that Peter Parker was really smart. Peter Parker knew his science. Peter Parker knew mathematics, right? That's what I tell him. You know what I'm saying? Peter Parker was a great reader. That's how he was able to create the webs. Like he did that at 17 years old. He's like, wow. I'm like, that's why you got to read. That's why, so I leverage it. But the other day he was asking, he was like, hey, Dad, I want to know more about Captain America. You think I could watch the Captain America movie? And I was like, well, let me look at the ratings and all that. And I went to Disney Plus and I hit the Marvel button. And then all this stuff came, man. Everything about and I thought like, wow. When I was 7 years old, I had to wait to Saturday morning at 8:30 to watch Spider-Man for 30 minutes. And if I missed it, I missed it. They wasn't coming back on. And now my son is in a world where there is a fifth realm that he has access to that can completely distract him from all the other realms. And as a father, I have the task of making sure that he understands how to navigate all five of these realms. That he understands that there's a spiritual realm. There's a God that he was created to serve, that gave him a purpose. That there's a physical realm where he has to take care of his body. He has to avoid poisons. Like he knows, like, hey, we wearing the cotton underwear now. There's a mental realm where his mind and his attitude and how he thinks about things. And sometimes he gets excited or he gets upset. It's like you got to control that. You got to choose your attitude. You got to make conscious choices. That there's a psychological realm that he has to navigate. He's got to understand as he gets older that there's an astral realm. And if he's a nice looking man, which I believe he will be, that he has to be smart about his choices and who he connects with and how he conducts himself sexually, because It could take all his potential and twist it up. And also that there's a digital realm that will do its best to disconnect him from every last one of those realms. And I'm afraid that for some of us, it's been this real slow evolution to where we don't even understand how we've in some ways have morphed into this new realm. Some of us move around like cyborgs and we don't even know it. We don't even get it. I was having a conversation with my barber. I invited him to the house last Sunday. We had a little small get together. And he was like, you know what I enjoyed about being at your home? I said, what's that? He said, we actually all talked. I said, what do you mean? He was cutting my hair yesterday. He said, what do you mean? He said, I ain't see nobody on their phone. He said, I can't tell you how many times I turn invitations down because I'm like, well, I could stay at home and check my social media. Why am I driving 30, 45 minutes to sit at a table with a bunch of grown men who are all looking at their phones? I said, are you serious? He said, man, that's what happens. He said, I don't know what it was about the environment you created, but we talked. Here's the thing, you all. Awareness is how we transform behavior. And more than anything, what I wanted to do today was introduce a new level of awareness, a new idea that maybe, just maybe, when you think about this concept of self-love, when we look at what love really is and the power and the possibility of love and how love has this healing force, are you actually giving that to yourself? Are you disciplining yourself with love? Are you immersing yourself in love? Are you spending time with yourself? Like my wife, her love language is quality time. How much time do you spend with you? Like in this type of a conversation, how can I be better? Where do I need to improve? In a relationship, those are the kind of conversations that grow the relationship. Well, you're in a relationship with yourself too. Are you having that talk with yourself? Are you noticing your behaviors and saying, why do I do that? I need to slow down and look at that. Why do I struggle with this? What are some of the ways that I can conquer that? Or are you moving so fast that it's been a long time since you've evaluated your behavior? It's been a long time since you've done a personal litmus test. And you can see what's wrong with everybody else. But there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing going on for you. Again, I started with this. I'll close with this. Just consider the things that you are most triggered by, the things that you cannot accept in other people, the things that you judge the most in others are most likely the things that you cannot be with about yourself. Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WBON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Liddell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.